Hey guys, this is Dave, aka Cryophonik, and I'm bringing you a little tutorial today on creating a kind of trancey, plucky supersaw sound in Omnisphere. And I'm going to do this today using nothing but Omnisphere's synth side. A lot of people talk about Omnisphere being a rompler and how limited it is, but I think a lot of people are really overlooking its potential and really, what you can actually do with the synth side. It's very, very deep and very, very well-rounded instrument, even if you don't touch that 40 gig sample library that comes with it. So let's jump in. First thing I'm going to do is go up under the utility menu here and clear the patch. Okay, and we're going to go to the edit window, and this is where we're going to do most of our work. So before I get started here, one thing I should mention is that this tutorial is not really designed for somebody who's a beginner at synthesis. So if you don't really have a good in-depth knowledge of subtractive synthesis, if you're not familiar with an oscillator is, or an LFO, or an envelope, you probably want to go take a look at some more fundamental information and then come back and look at this. Otherwise, you'll probably be a little bit lost. But this is a pretty simple sound to make here, and I'm hoping to walk you through kind of Omnisphere's architecture and mostly just the synth side of it, and hopefully you can start to see some of the potential. So one thing with Omnisphere here is every patch is made up of two layers. We have layer A tab selected here, and here's layer B. So you can combine those two together to make one patch. And then you can take each patch and you can layer 8 of them together to make this one big, it's called a multi in Omnisphere. It's basically 8 patches that you can have playing independent of each other, or you can stack them to make one gigantic patch. We're going to keep it simple today, one layer, and as you see right in the middle of the menu here, there is a sample button and a synth button. If you keep it on sample, then you can click this button in this little folder right here, and it will bring up the browser for the sample library. And there it is, the thousands of samples that come with this. So you can use those as your sound source and synthesize your patches using those, or you can click on the synth button here, and here you're presented with your traditional analog type waveforms, and this little arrow here will show you the different options. Got saw, square, bright, triangle, sine, and noise. You're probably thinking, wow, that's it? Just those 5? Well, not really. That's just your starting point. So the slider right below this is your shape, and this allows you to morph from, in this case, saw to square. So there you go. There's your square, and you can see it change right in the window right above there. You also have a symmetry knob that kind of twists the shape of it. And you also have a hard sync. So as you can see, you can pretty quickly dial in whatever waveform you're looking for. You've also got FM, ring modulator, and then you've got a wave shaper over here. Lets you do some bit crushing and reduction. You can dial in the depth. We're going to keep it simple here. We're going to stick with just your standard saw, square, fat. In fact, I'm going to turn the wave shaper off. And okay, pretty basic sound there. So the first thing we want to do is come over here to the multi, and we're going to fatten that sound up. You have to turn this on first, and that'll give you your unison. As you can see, that's adding additional voices and spreading them across the stereo field, and you've got some adjustments here. But what I'm going to do today is I'm going to use the harmonia rather than the unison, and I'll explain some of that here shortly. First thing I'm going to do is just turn off these additional voices, and With Omnisphere, anytime you see one of these magnifying glasses, if you click that, that will open up another window that lets you dive a little deeper for some more editing. And in this case, here are your voices for the harmonia. I'm going to change this default just back to all zeros to start out with, and turn the first two on. There you go. You can hear a little bit of unison there. And here are the pan controls for each of those. I'm going to pan those apart a little ways. And we're going to detune them. There you go. Now we're starting to thicken things up. Now, one of the things I'm going to do here is on this third one, I'm going to put a perfect fifth on there. I'm going to raise that by 7 semitones. You can hear that fifth come in. And I'll leave that centered, and I'll leave the tuning flat on that one. And on this fourth voice down here, I'm going to drop that down an octave for basically a sub-oscillator. Okay, that's a good starting point for our harmonia. Come back to the main page here, and you can hear it's pretty thick, but it's kind of static sounding, so I'm going to add a little bit of vibrato to that by coming down here to the first LFO, and I'm going to modulate the pitch a little bit. Over on the left here, you've got some controls for your two layers, A and B here. All the ones on the left hand side are for layer A, and down at the bottom here we have a transpose and we have a fine tuning adjustment. So I want to add an LFO to that, and one way to do it is to right click on it, modulate, and modulate with an LFO. This will assign the first available LFO to that parameter, in this case the fine tuning. And as you see up here in the modulation window, you've got LFO1 modulating the pitch fine parameter. And you can see the blue here is the range of modulation, and the little white dot there tracks the movement of the LFO. Now you can see that's pretty wide, and when you hear it, you're going to go, wow. That's a bit much. We don't want that. So I'm going to dial down the range of that, and as I bring the slider down, you're going to see that pull in, and now the blue is just barely peeking outside the center of the pitch there. So that's one way to drop that down. That will adjust how much LFO is affecting this particular parameter. You also have down here under the LFO, you have a depth, which is kind of a master. So if you have this LFO assigned to a bunch of different parameters and it's modulating all of them, you can bring all of them down with this depth control, or you can do it individually by coming up here or going into the mod matrix. But we'll stay here for now, and I'm going to bring that depth down a little bit. Okay, that's better. Now I want to adjust the rate. I'm going to turn on the sync here so that it's synced to my host tempo, and I'm going to bring this up. This adjusts the note divisions. I'll go half. Okay, it's still a little bit much, and I don't want it to start right away, so I'm going to bring up the delay a little way so that it holds static for just a moment, and then the LFO kicks in. Might be a little too long. Okay, that's good. So now we're going to come over here and we're going to shape the sound with envelopes. And as you see here, you've got your amp envelope, your filter envelope, and then you've got 4 assignable ones. And these are actually pretty cool. I won't really use these too much right now, but see here, you can go into each one of these and assign them. Okay, here's a kind of a step shape for a mod envelope. It's not assigned to anything right now, so it won't sound like anything, but I just want to show you real quick what you can do with these, because these envelopes are pretty crazy. Here's your standard ADSR envelope, but you can right click anywhere here and add a node and shape these things however you want. You can adjust the curve however you want, And you can get really crazy by adding things like spikes and bumps and 4 pulses. And you can have these things loop, and you can have them get random. It's just crazy what you can do with these envelopes. But as I said before, we're going to stick with the amp envelope. I'm going to exit this zoom window and just go back to the standard window here and bring the sustain down and bring the decay down just a bit. Trying to get a plucky sound here. So that's pretty good for the amp, and we'll do something similar for the filter. Bring these down just a little ways, and I want that filter to kind of mute the sound a bit. So I'm going to come up here, turn the filter on, and as you can see here, you've got a lot of different filters to choose from: high pass, low pass, some specialty ones. I'm just going to grab a 4-pole here, low pass warm, and bring the decay up just a little bit. There we go. That's sounding pretty good there. Bring the cutoff up just a little bit and add a little bit of resonance in there. All right, there we go. So that's a decent starting point for the filters. And now we'll go over here and we'll throw some effects on here. One thing with Omnisphere is for each patch, you've got a common set of effects that you can add to it, or you can add individual effects to each layer. So in all, if you're using both layers and the common, you can have a total of 12 effects. And all you do to add an effect is click on the little arrow here, and you can come down here and bring in whichever effect you want. I'm going to add a little bit of compression to this. Lower that threshold. Dial down the attack a little bit. That's pretty good. And I'm going to add a little bit of reverb. We'll go with the easy verb here. And over here on the left, you have a mix adjustment. Lets you dial in how much of the effect you want. That's pretty good. Maybe a little more pre-delay. That's a little more length on that. And okay, that's sounding okay. And let's add a 2-tap delay in here. Alright, and again, we have a mix adjustment over here. And then you have individual level and pan for the left and right delay. We'll just leave those where they are. They're good enough for now. Alright, and there you have it. There's a pretty good Supersaw. I'm going to go back here to the edit page and try a few more things on it. I like to add some performance controls to all my patches. So one of the things I'm going to do here is I want the mod wheel to kind of close that filter down a little bit more, choke off some of that high end. So one way you could do that is I could assign the mod wheel right to the cutoff frequency, but I think what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to assign it to the envelope. And I'm going to right click on it, go to modulate, and modulate with wheel. Now as you see, that shows up over here now in the modulation. If I click this little arrow here, it'll show you all the available modulation sources, and then here are all of, sources and destinations down here. And here's the amount of effect that the wheel will have on the modulation target. And I'm going to bring this down a little bit. As you can see right now, it's positive. Yeah, a little bit of blue there. So right now, if I turn the wheel up, it's going to actually increase the envelope. I don't want that. I want it to decrease. So I'm going to click the little invert button here, and now you see the blue is on the left-hand side. And when I bring up the mod wheel, it brings down the envelope amount. A little bit more. There we go. And maybe even a little more. A little further. All right, that's pretty good. And I also want to go back over here and revisit this harmonia here. And one of the things I want to do here is I want to be able to adjust how much of that perfect fifth is blended in and how much of the sub-oscillator is blended in. So I'm going to add a controller to this. I'm going to go to MIDI CC Learn and just turn one of the knobs on my controller here. And now I have a way of dialing in how much of that fifth I hear. So that's pretty cool. I'll do the same thing with the sub oscillator. I'll assign that to a different knob. And now I can dial in how much of that low end I get. Last but not least, I'm going to exit this window here, come back to my main window, and as you remember, this shape will morph from a saw waveform into a square waveform. So I'm going to assign another controller to that just to give me even a little more control over the sound. Again, MIDI CC Learn and turn a knob on my controller here, and now I'm set. There we go, from a saw to a square. That's pretty much it for that sound. Last thing I want to do here is save it. So if you come up here under the utility menu, got plenty of options here. Again, this is a patch, it's not a multi. If it was a multi, there would be a whole bunch of patches layered together. So we want to save the patch. So we'll come right here and it'll ask us where we want to save it. I'm going to put it under keyboards and give it a name. I'll just call it Supersaw 2, save, and then it will bring up this edit tags window, which will allow us to add some attributes and different tags to it so we can find it easier in our browser later on. So just select some of these. As you select these over here, it puts it right into the overview field here. We'll stick with that for now. Under genre, we'll go with electronica, trance, dance. The complexity, that's low complexity. Author, that would be me. Down here you could do some keywords, and I'll just call it Supersaw. Oops. Tutorial. And if I want, I can put my website in there and some notes, and go ahead and hit save. It will add it to our library that we can access from this little folder here. This will open up the browser where we can find that by coming down here. That was saved in our user patches, so if you change this to user, it'll show up right there. I can find it by selecting the fields that I assigned to it under the different attributes, and there you go, it's showing up. So that's it. Hopefully you guys found this useful, and maybe seen a different side to Omnisphere that you hadn't seen before. Have fun, enjoy it, and thanks for watching.